Good evening and welcome to the January 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Gaithersburg Planning Commission. Alternate Commissioner Sharon Cantrell is joining us on the dais and participating this evening, as not all commissioners are present. First up is the approval of our minutes from January 8th, 2020. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of January 8th, 2020 as read into the record.
Second?
Moved and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next up is our sign permit agenda, and there is one this evening. And Caroline, to avoid being redundant, why don't you go ahead and read it into the record,
okay.
please?
Good evening. This is a sign permit, sign 2704-2019 for 6 Montgomery Village Avenue. It is a monument sign. The sign is proposed to be located near the corner of Russell Avenue and Montgomery Village Avenue, and it's right here on the aerial. This is 6 Montgomery Village Avenue. Fire station is across to the northeast here, and Russell Avenue, Lake Forest Mall is just off the screen to the bottom right. The application comes before the Planning Commission because the proposed monument sign is 10 feet 9 inches in height on one side, and signs exceeding 8 feet in height may be approved by the Planning Commission in accordance with Section 24-212M2. The application also comes before the Planning Commission because the proposed sign includes 17.5-inch and 16-inch letter heights for the building address, requiring an adjustment from Section 24-212M5, which states that individual letter height shall not be less than 7 inches and not more than 12 inches. The sign manufacturers, Deshelle Huntsberry and Samantha Arano of SMI Signs, are here, and I will introduce them and let them
Good evening.
take you through
Good
the sign.
evening. Okay, the sign that we are proposing, the way it's mounted, it is on a slope. And we cannot move it closer to the sidewalk because of it being in the pedestrian walkway. And if we move it backwards, it's going to be in the parking spots, which there is an existing wall and bushes that's going to interfere with the visual of that sign. So what we are asking is that the one sign can be mounted down over the slope. The one side of the sign will be 8 foot, and the other sign would be 10 foot 9 inches tall, which will be better visible for the customers. And not only that, it would help with the tenants that's in that area, so that, you know, they can have more business drawn in and easier to find.
Is it sitting on a footprint that's existing now for a sign base?
No.
This is brand new. There's nothing,
Brand new
nothing
sign.
there
There's
now.
nothing there.
No, okay. All right. And the only one that exceeds the upper end of the letterhead is the 6, the word 6, right?
No.
Oh,
There's a number 6 on the side of the sign
okay. So
that also
that's
exceeds the
taller.
height.
Okay. And there's no confusion. That is the address, so.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Yeah.
Is this going to contain all the tenants that are presently in that building, or is there room or flexibility for new tenants that come in, or sublets or something like that?
Well, it's going to accommodate all the existing tenants. That's why there aren't any tenants' names in there at the moment.
Right.
But then once a vacancy comes up, then a new tenant will move in and they'll have the opportunity to have that space and to permit that space on that sign.
Okay. My concern is that somewhere down the road, there may be subdivisions and things like that where you may have more tenants and they couldn't all fit on the sign, or perhaps one tenant becomes a dominant tenant. What happens in that situation with respect to the lettering and the sign?
Well, the property owners or the property management can allocate each tenant on how much signage they're allowed to have. And then that way it's spread out between each tenant and everybody gets the same.
So let's clarify that. Would you zoom in, Caroline, on
Yeah.
one or the other of the sign elevation, proposed elevations? Just, yeah.
What? If I can. Hold on, it's all set up different than I'm used to it being.
That should help.
Huh? Oh, thank you.
Okay. You go.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, a little bit more, just to zoom in a bit more. Yeah, that's good. So I think this question goes to each line right now says future tenant name. which theoretically is a tenant, but even that line could be, I guess, divided in half, and you could have 2 tenants per line.
Yes, sir. Yep.
At that letter height, or at the
At the
minimum
letter,
letter height.
right,
Yes,
that's,
sir.
that's my concern.
Yeah.
Does that represent the minimum letter height, or is that a little bit larger, or
Right.
what's really?
No, that's 7 inches. That's the minimum.
So that represents the minimum, so it would never get smaller than that, but it might be, there might be 2 tenants side by side.
Correct.
Okay.
Good.
And what is at the back of the sign?
It's the same thing. It's double-faced, and it looks identical
It's
to
a
this
mirror,
side.
okay. And the same tenants?
Same tenants.
Okay. Any other questions about the presentation? I'm going to say this for the record. Is anyone in the audience here to comment on this application? So, seeing none. Caroline, what's your recommendation, please, and then we'll move to discussion.
Staff recommends that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report, findings, and recommendation, grant sign approval for sign height and sign adjustment approval for letter height for sign 20704-2019, finding it in accordance with sections 24-212M and 24-213AF of the City Code.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the recommendation?
No.
No questions, just a couple observations.
Please jump in. Yeah.
I think we probably don't need to we don't need to worry about something we normally worry about, which is fire department identification of the address. I think they'll find it directly across the street. I think, but I think we also we're often worried about wayfinding, and when we start making exceptions to height, we want to make sure that we're making exceptions for height for some unique conditions, obviously. And I think the slope is a unique condition. So if we measured somewhere in the middle, we might be closer to compliance with the basic sign ordinance. Certainly the rear is, just not the front. So it depends kind of where you measure it. But I would also kind of argue that it's sort of an old school I-3 property with a donut parking, right? So there's retail tenants actually and office
Right.
tenants at the first
Right.
floor on the back side of the building. And what we're really trying to do with these is have effective wayfinding
Right.
without creating visual barriers, right, and visual noise. So even though this is, I think, in my mind, getting to the busy stage
Mhm.
of a sign, so it gets a little bit muddled, maybe. It's also important for folks to figure out where that other retailer is. It's on the back side of the office building. It's not visible from the street.
Sure.
So in my mind, it's an approvable variance, so, for those unique reasons.
Sounds good. Any other
Is there
comments?
are there any plans in the future for Russell Avenue, for a sign off of Russell Avenue? You've got an entrance there from a parking lot perspective, and traffic does come up from Russell. I mean, it would make a lot of sense to,
Potentially, yeah.
okay, just, so the sign would be a similar kind of footprint, similar kind of...
Yes, it would be similar.
And the good news is, to me, I had the same thought too, and especially with the wall there,
Yeah.
that you're not going to see it till you're almost to that intersection, but they have an entrance on both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they can make the right then once they see the
And
sign,
come
and then
Right.
come in the backside
Right.
too. So that felt a little better about it.
Okay. The only observation I make is that there's a 6 spelled out, there's a 6 numeral,
Mhm.
and there's a name of the building, Montgomery Executive Center. So strictly from a branding and wayfinding, I'd almost rather you pick one and stick with it, and then leave the rest of the space a little bit looser to actually see the tenants. You know, I mean, at some point, it doesn't matter that it's Montgomery Executive Center, it matters it's 6 Montgomery Village Avenue, and they're looking for, you know, the such and such agency, which will be on there. Purely a subjective call at this point, but it's a recommendation that maybe if you did that, it would leave a little bit more wiggle room for some space for the actual tenant signs to be more legible. Unless there's something really critical about branding the name of the overall building in addition to its number or its address, then I'll leave that to you guys, but so that's the one observation I make, just looking at it from kind of a generic
It's a cluttered
perspective.
brand,
Yeah.
It's cluttered.
Um,
But I agree with you, it's not a need, it's just sort of an observation.
But there might be something out there in the market that would demand a building name, so that's fine too. Any other?
I just had one more question. Is there a 6 on the building itself?
Yes.
Yes,
Is it in a
Yeah.
6 number or a 6 letter?
No.
they're letters.
They're letters?
Mhm.
Okay. So it's consistent with what the building looks like?
Yeah.
Yes, they want to keep all their branding the same.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, so the 6 at the base is actually the
Should
address
sign that.
requirement for emergency.
For
They have to
correct.
have an address on the street.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
got it, yep.
Yes.
All right, very good.
I don't know. I guess my brain works differently. I mean, I just like I like the use of the
Careful,
little
right?
triangle where it says Montgomery Village Avenue. They kind of fit it in there, and I guess they probably tried Montgomery Executive Center and didn't fit, so they flopped it. So just it worked for me.
Good, all right. No, I think it's all very reasonable
nice.
and
Yeah, it
in
looks
keeping
nice.
with the
Yeah.
scale of the building and the scale of the site
Yeah.
and
And
the
very
odd
tasteful.
Yeah.
topography. Any other comments, concerns? All right. If not, we have a recommendation from staff. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, based on the exhibit submitted, the applicant's testimony, the staff report, findings, and recommendations, I move that the Planning Commission grant sign approval for sign height and sign adjustment approval for the letter height for sign 2704-2019, finding in accordance with Section 22-212M and Section 24-213A, small f, of the City Code.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks very much. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up is our site plan agenda. We have one of those tonight, and that's for ASP-8315-2019 to satisfy a condition of approval for the front entrance canopies for the Crown Neighborhood 3 16-foot townhouses in the MXD mixed-use development zone. And it was for an amendment to final plan, and presenting from staff is Jasmine Forbes. Good evening, Jasmine.
Good evening. So staff is before you about a condition on amendment to final site plan application, AFP-8315-2019, the Crown Neighborhood 3 16-foot architecture. So the architecture for the 16-foot townhouses was first presented to the Planning Commission on October 16th, 2019, and the Commission approved the architecture with a condition that required the applicant to incorporate covered canopies on front of all the front entrances to the townhouses. And at the time when the condition was added, staff failed to note that within the design guidelines, stoops, terraces, and outside stairways, which extend into any yard area, may not be roofed, and that Planning Commission would have to grant the modification to those design guidelines. So that's why staff's before you this evening for Planning Commission to grant that modification. So the applicant revised the front elevations to include 2 types of canopies, which you can see here on the screen. One is a flat hanging metal canopy, and the other one is an angled roof canopy, and all other aspects of the plans have not changed. So the applicant has received approval from the Crown architect and developer for the proposed modifications, and staff supportive of this proposed modification, and the Commission has approved similar modifications for other builders within Crown.
So the actual application is in as satisfying a condition of a
Yes.
part. So do we need to do a second motion for approving the design guideline or modifying the design guidelines, or?
So you're saying a separate motion to approve?
I'm just asking, because what you say is that we have to approve a modification to the design guidelines. That's different than saying they've satisfied the condition of approval for their site plan. So I didn't know whether it needs to be either bundled together as one motion or one finding, or if it's 2.
I mean, I would say they would satisfy both.
I think it'd be yeah, I think one motion would satisfy.
I think
it.
one motion that specifies both. That way, if there is a modification needed, it's specified that that was approved.
Okay.
By amending the final site plan, we do both, essentially. Right.
Oh, so we don't have to mention anything about the design guidelines?
If it's clear that that this would require an amendment to that, that should be included as an approval also, but I would agree with Greg's point that it can all be one motion. It
Okay.
doesn't have to be 2 separate motions.
So maybe we just need help with wording the motion so that it includes the design guideline?
Yes, to make sure it has that
Okay.
reference.
Any recommendations on the fly? With thousands of people watching you?
No pressure.
So you would say amendment to final site plan /
Right.
and guidelines.
And any, if
That's all.
this change
In the motion.
Applicable guideline constraints.
has that impact, yes.
Yeah, I would say staff recommends that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, the staff report findings recommendation, grant AFP 8315-2019, amendment to final site plan, and requested modifications to design guidelines finding in compliance with section 24170 and 24172A of the city code with one condition.
I'm finished.
That's it. That's it.
That was so good.
So Marion, you're going to have to look at that recording. You're going to have to slow it down, I think. But that sounds good.
That sounds great.
All right, any issues with the proposed canopies?
Makes it look good.
All right.
No.
Improves it.
I just had one quick question. I mean, who caught that? Because I remember this whole canopy thing, and I mean, I guess you were just looking at it, and it's
Well,
just something you caught.
Pulte were the very first ones to come before the
Okay.
planning commission for the
Yeah.
architecture, and staff never caught it until the other bills came in, and we
Yeah.
looked at the design
Yeah.
guidelines and realized. So that's why
Good.
when Lennar and Craftmark came, we made sure that
Right.
we included as part of their approval.
Y'all are always on top of it.
Yes, indeed. All right, any other comments or questions? If not, is there a motion, please? And keep in mind the recommended motion is
I'm
read
not
into the
trying
record. But please do reference read into the record by staff as
Right.
opposed to what's been on the...
Mr. Chairman, based on the exhibits submitted in the applicant's testimony, I'll go a little bit slower. And the
Right.
staff exhibits submitted in the applicant's, staff report, finding and recommendation, move that the Planning Commission grant AFP 8315-2019 amendment to final site plan and modification of the guidelines,
Design guidelines.
of the guidelines,
Of the design guidelines.
design
Design
guidelines, thank you.
right.
Finding it in compliance with section 24-170 and 24-172A of the city code with the one, there is a condition?
One.
One
There is.
condition.
One.
If you want to slow down and understand what that is, they're recommending
Yeah.
that they have to modify the site plans to reflect these canopies, and it'll be a minor amendment.
Oh, I see it.
to the
I'm sorry.
plan.
Yeah,
It's staff
yeah.
approval. So
I
if
got
you're
it.
okay with that
Yeah,
condition?
fine, the one condition.
Okay.
Second?
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. A little bit messy, but effective nevertheless. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to, from the, actually, let me ask Greg, Rob sent us an email about our question on master plan updates. Are
Yeah.
you going to talk about that? Do we need to talk about it? Or just, that's the answer?
Yes.
By email, okay.
good.
But there's a schedule coming once the visioning is done by the council.
Correct. And I mean, if you do have any additional questions, obviously I would suggest reach out to Rob
Okay,
on that, and he'll answer that for you.
fair enough. Okay, so we'll do from the commission. Lloyd, may I start with you?
I just want to thank Michael Johnson of staff and his staff for responding very quickly to a situation that was considered to be somewhat dangerous about a bridge that was very, it was a pedestrian bridge that was very slippery, and a citizen actually broke her wrist as well as her ankle
Ooh.
slipping on the bridge. And within 24 hours of calling, they had a sign up saying slippery when wet on both sides of the bridge, and it was really very prompt, and really want to thank the staff for their promptness and courtesy in addressing the situation.
Once again, outstanding service.
Outstanding,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
indeed. Thank you for that. Matt, anything?
Nope,
to add?
what's up?
All right, Danny?
Nothing tonight.
All right, Sharon?
I'm set.
Okay.
I'm good.
What do we got from staff tonight, Greg?
Just a reminder on two dates. We have a joint public hearing scheduled for February 3rd, and that is on the new sign ordinance. And the next planning commission meeting is February 5th.
Already in February.
Wow.
Already.
All right.
And I still write 2019.
Anything else from anybody? All right. If not, have a good evening. We're adjourned.